All right, so Bill, this is round two of the podcast, my friend. So you were on how long ago?
It was back in October of 22, I think is when it was.
Yeah, awesome.
Somewhere in that part.
And back then, just for the audience sake, because it'll be great to kind of walk them through your progression. But what kind of production were you doing back then?
So that was my first full year in production. I think I closed 13 deals that year with a GCI of about 50,000 is what it turned out to be. Was really just getting my feet wet, and ironically enough, that was just based on about 3 months worth of prospecting. Like that wasn't anything crazy. And fast forward to now, I doubled that last year, and I'm probably from that original number, I should about triple that this year. So
It's a great progression. All the way from a brand new agent, your first essentially full year, we'll call it 3 or 4 months, you made 50 grand. And then your second year, you did 100 grand. And then this year, you're on pace to do what? A couple 100,000?
should be finishing this year. So I've got three that are going to close next week or the week after. Then after that, I mean, I should be somewhere in the ballpark of 150, 170 this year, somewhere like
Yeah.
that. 200 is not off the table, especially with the last few weeks, the way prospecting has been going and the way the conversations that I'm having with sellers now, knowing that August 17th coming up, now that I'm educated with it, like a lot of people respect that, and I'm getting really, really busy. So 200 is not off the table by any stretch of the imagination.
It's amazing. I mean, that's a really good path of trajectory since you were just brand new, which is why I wanted to have this conversation again on the podcast. So this will be really good for all of the new agents that might be watching this, or agents that have been doing this for a couple of years. And so let's walk them through kind of what your business looks like today. Let's start off with lead generation, which I think for most agents is the biggest struggle. What is your business model when it comes to acquiring new clients?
I just prospect. Whenever I prospected, whenever I talked to you a couple months ago or a couple years ago, it was just FISBO. But I've now transitioned to FISBO and expireds, old expireds, new expireds. I find those conversations really, really easy to have. And I look back at my numbers this year, and if we'd have had this interview a month and a half ago, before I started really tracking my stuff, I would have said 90% of my business has come from for sale by owner or expireds. But now, with the job that I've done with the previous ones, I'm getting referrals from those past clients, and that's where a lot of my new clients are coming from also. So I would say prospecting wise, FISBO expireds, but also leaning into those past sales and talking to those people and having great relationships with them because they trust you and they love you and they'll send you people.
That's right. I mean, that's the compounding effect of prospecting, right? It's not only getting the
Exactly.
new client, but then once you acquire that client, a for sale by owner or an expired, both of which other agents have failed them, and you're the agent who've served them at the highest level. Now you've got this database of past clients that are out there singing your praises, sending you referrals, which add on to the prospecting that you continue to do. Not to mention that now you've got a pipeline. Now you've got a lot better skill set, et cetera, et cetera. So you're doing past client database. We'll talk about that. For sale by owners, new and old expireds. Let's talk about your prospecting efforts. And specifically, from a skills perspective, let's talk about what's working, because here's the thing. You know this as well as anybody else. There's a lot of agents who say, yes, I've heard that I should be prospecting. Yes, I heard that I should be calling for sale by owners and expireds. But when I do, A, I don't have very good conversations, and B, I can't ever set appointments. So what have you done to grow your skills over the past couple of years that has helped you have these conversations such that you are able to have good conversations? You are able to generate leads and appointments.
It's taking the commission breath out of your voice, learning that this conversation is not about me, it's about you. I'm calling from a angle of helping you, not necessarily it's what can I do for you, not can you do for me. And with those skills, and it lines up perfectly. It took me a long time to find you, and because everything else I was reading and learning, it all sounded either A, incredibly too passive, like it was too, like if you called today, that business may come in 6 or 8 months, or it was super aggressive and it didn't sound like me. So with your approach that you teach us, it's legitimately like you have a servant's heart going out there, and I'm ready when you're ready type of deal. And you just sound different than everybody else. I don't live in an area where I have to compete with a ton of agents prospecting, which is a bonus. But if I do, I know that I sound different from them because again, I'm coming at it at an angle where I want to help. I know.
I love it. And it makes all the difference. And when I listen to these calls, you're exactly right. Most of this conversation would convince the prospect to meet with them. You taken a completely different approach. You said, no, I'm going to make the conversation about the prospect. So it's easy to have the conversation. It's easy for the prospect to invite me over to talk about helping them get their property sold because the whole conversation is built around the prospect. Is that right?
No, that's exactly right. Let me move you for a second. I'm afraid my internet's about to kill out on me. No, that's exactly right. It's we're talking to people and we're asking, like if I were to make the call, it's not a very pushy. Invite me over. You're crazy to not do this. You're crazy to sell it on your own or anything. It's man, I know how hard this is, and just like I told you in our last video, and this has kind of really helped me throughout this, is that if I'm able to get an appointment or when I'm on the phone with them, sometimes my most success rate has really nothing to do with the house for the most part. It's about building a relationship and figuring out why are you moving? What's going? Because nobody wakes up. I found this out in the last couple of years. Nobody wakes up out of the blue one day and says, "I want to sell my house."
That's right.
There's a life event that's happened, and if you can relate to them, and you can actually not, it's not just coach speak or a word salad. I'm not just saying, "Oh, I want to help you out because so and so passed away or whatever." If you truly have a servant's heart and you want to help them, that's your number one goal, and selling the house is a byproduct of helping that.
What a great point. What a great point. I think too many agents are focused on the transaction, the listing
Yeah.
itself, and they're forgetting, to your point, you nailed it. Nobody wants to list their house. They would prefer not to have to go through that process, but because of a life event, they're making a move. They have to sell the house, and you're focused on, hey, what are we doing this for? Where are you going? What's the outcome? And you're focused on helping them achieve the outcome. The listing and the selling of the home is the byproduct of that.
That's exactly right. And honestly, every listing appointment I sit at, if I'm signing paperwork or whatever, I already know this answer before I even list the house. I always ask them because I'll tell you this: I'm not gonna list somebody's house unless they know what the next step is,
Sure.
and I want to help them figure that out because there's nothing worse than getting a house under contract and they don't know what the next step is. They're scared. So I always say, hey, listen, I hope you know this isn't over. Or we're getting ready to go to the closing table. I say, I hope you know this isn't the last time we're talking. I'm here forever. Like if we're going to wait 6 months and then buy a house, I'm going to be here then. Or if you need help before we even put this house on the market, figuring out your next move, whether it takes a couple of weeks or a few months, figuring that step out, I'm here to do that too. I say I'm full service. I've even helped people move out of their house before. So, I mean, it's just, that's how you have to go at it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love it. Let me ask you this. So sticking on just your prospecting efforts, we're going to talk about your past clients in just a second.
Yeah.
How much, if you look at all the listing appointments or all the appointments you've set with homeowners, what percentage comes from talking to somebody once versus, to your point, building a pipeline, building that relationship, and setting the appointment through lead follow-up? What would you say?
I would say about half and half.
Yeah.
There are sometimes that I can get on the phone, and just last Monday, I called somebody. This is no joke, and went on the appointment 30 minutes later.
Yeah.
And then the call that I made just before that, the lady called me back as I was pulling in the driveway. I set the appointment for 2 days later. She canceled it on me because she's talking to two other agents. And she said, we're going to wait a week or two. And right before I jumped on this call, I shot her a text. I said, hey, it's been a week. I don't want to rush you. Just checking in to see how things are going. Have you got your house sold? This is the pattern interrupt that I think that's going to that's going to get me that appointment. She texted me and she said, she texted back finally and said, I have a buyer's agent that wants to come show it. I'm trying to agree with them on what the percentage percentages are. Literally texted her back. I said, "That's awesome. I hope you sell that thing." And she was probably like,
That's right.
"Hope I sell it. You're not getting any money out of this." I mean, it's just a pattern interrupt I'm trying to throw out there.
That's right. That's exactly right. I mean, you to your point earlier, it just makes you so much different than everybody else because again, your goal is to help the person, right? If the goal is if you can sell this thing and get what you want and I'm not involved, well, I'd be a slime ball to think, well, I'm not getting paid. I'm only interested if that's not what we're talking about. We're trying to serve people. And if that means that they do business with somebody else, fine. That's the difference between the needy, desperate commission breath agents that everyone's trained to be. But if that means that you need my help, I'm fine with that too. Either way, I'm fine.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. So 50-50 is pretty much what I see across the board. 50% of the appointments come from your first call, 50% come out of the lead follow-up or your database. Now, when we're talking about the listing appointment per se, what are the things that you feel have really helped you, Bill, to position yourself at that appointment as the type of agent the seller wants to hire that inevitably allows you to win the business and get somebody to say, you know what, Bill, you're our guy. Let's go ahead and move forward. What are you doing at the listing appointment to help you do that?
Really, first and foremost, I kind of tell them what to expect. I don't set the agenda I do set the agenda somewhat, and I tell them, hey, this is what we're going to go over, just to give you a heads up, so at the end of it. But really, truly, Brandon, anybody I talk to, whether it be the first time I've spoke to you or we've had 6 months of conversations, I sit with them and I'll ask them, hey, can I be blunt with you? Can I be straight with you? I said, a lot of agents are going to come in here and buy your listing. And then I explain what that means.
Right.
And then I'm going to tell you straight up. And first and foremost, I tell them what it's going to take to sell their home with confidence, because now I have a track record, a proven track record that I can say, this is what I've done and this is what helps. But most importantly, I talk to those people across the table from me as if they're my best friend or my mother or my father or a family member of mine. I'm super relaxed and with professionalism, honestly. I'm not running in there wearing like a Dale Earnhardt t-shirt and drinking a beer with them. But, unless it calls for that, I'm not against it.
Sure.
But just having the confidence that I know what I'm talking about. And, I'll tell you this part real quick. I went on an expired about a month ago. It expired 6 months ago. It expired after being on the market for 6 months. I walked in with confidence, told her I really wanted to help her. I won't go over the whole listing presentation because it'll take too long. But again, coming to it with purpose, wanting to help her out, we listed it for 5,000 more. And then she came off the market for. We had it under contract in 2 days, and it's closing in like a week. And then this last one I went on, it was an expired. That's the one I showed today. I told him straight up, I was like, man, I want to help you. I came in, the last agent listed it for 5% and $15,000 higher than I've got it listed for. I listed it at 6% and $15,000 lower. He said, dude, you're our agent for life. Don't worry about it. Like, say less. And it's just because I can't tell everybody enough that it's about the relationship, and it has to be a genuine relationship, not a transactional one.
That's right. No, that's all really good feedback. And yeah, I think that how you start that conversation at an appointment sets the tone for how the prospect perceives you, how the seller perceives you. Can they see themselves working with somebody such as yourself? When you set it up and you say, listen, here's kind of what you can expect from the industry. And then you say, here's how I would prefer to be. You do something in the mind of the prospect immediately where the prospect says, wow, I didn't know if I should meet with this person or not. You just make them feel so comfortable. That's the key.
That's exactly right. That's what and not to, I don't want to sound like I'm patting myself on the back, but there have been so many clients that have said, we feel like we've known you for years, or, I still have a lady who I moved out of here at the beginning of the year, and she calls me once every couple of weeks just to talk. I moved her out of state, moved her out west, and I really base a lot of my stuff on relationships, and it has paid me back 10 times over.
Yeah, I bet. Well, let's talk about past clients. So now that you have been doing this for a couple of years, you're starting to build up that past client database. What are you doing to stay in touch with them? Do you have a system you follow? What do those conversations sound like? Kind of walk us through that.
Yeah. staying top of mind is key. It's number one. Obviously, it's what everybody tries to do. Everybody hopes to do. My next step in my business is actually putting some systems in place that makes this run like a well-oiled machine. So right now, I have basically controlled chaos.
Sure.
Um, I do go through my database. I try to send a weekly email out every week, and it's nothing that's like. I mean, it's just talking about houses that I've got on the market or something. But it, calling them every day, adding them on social media, commenting on stuff, that sounds so generic. But really, I'll send out, I'll shoot them a happy birthday text because I try to put everybody's birthday in there and just staying top of mind and calling and having genuine conversations. Not necessarily, oh, I've got you scheduled in my calendar for next Tuesday
Right.
to call you. It's you're sitting there, and if you are like me, you post things on social media whenever you sell a house. Well, we all have Facebook, we all have Instagram. You'll see what you did last year or 2 years ago. Well, guess what? We sold so and so a house 2 years ago. I'm going to call her, see how life's going. Not about the house, just call and just kind of reminisce about the process. Do you remember how crazy that was? Oh man, blah blah blah. And you wouldn't believe the amount of people that I haven't talked to in 2 or 3 months, 4 or 5 months. They say, "Hey, I got a cousin," or they'll call me and they'll say, "You sold my cousin's house, and we want you to help us buy a house." Again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but if you instead of casting your net a mile wide and an inch deep, if you cast your net an inch wide and a mile deep, that's what's going to pay you over and over and over again. Because sometimes I don't have to touch base with them every quarter, every month. They just remember how great the process was and how awesome of a time we had. And again, that sounds like I'm patting myself on the back, but truly, that's just how I follow up with them you know if I don't need to.
Yeah, I love it. And you hit the nail on the head. I always have said the best form of lead generation is taking care of the client you have already,
Yeah.
right? And so not only that, the other thing you said was really key too. What I did for my whole career, if I was driving from an appointment to appointment, it wasn't that I had this scripted call. It was, hey, let me scroll through my phone and touch base with 3 or 4 past clients. I'm going to be in the car anyways. And I don't have a script per se. I don't need a script. It's a relationship. Do you need a script when you call your friend? No, I didn't think so. It's not a scripted phone call. This
Yeah.
is you building a business of relationships. I call it assets under management because it's what we do. We sell homes and we manage these relationships. That's what we do. That's the business that we are in. And so the magic happens. The third thing you said was it is unbelievable how it happens where you call people randomly, just past clients, and because of that voice to voice conversation, it's funny what happens. For whatever reason, they always think of somebody. You know what? My cousin is selling. I'm going to have him call you. You know what? It's funny you should call me. My sister's actually thinking about moving, Bill. I was going to, every time. I don't know why. I
Yep.
just feel like it's the sales gods kind of paying you back for staying in touch with these people when most agents don't. Every time you make a call to a past client, it seems like magic happens. And that sounds like what happens to you too.
That's exact. I mean, it's almost like I don't even have to ask. Like I'll call
No.
somebody and they're like, I was just talking to my cousin last week and they're thinking about moving to the area. And I actually told them to call you. Have they called you yet? And you're like, no, not yet. And it's the same thing with social media. People now, like I don't have to post TikToks of me dancing and no judgment if you do. I'm not knocking you. But like
Sure.
if I get on there and I'll like post a sale and then I'll, say a few words about how the transaction went. I promise you, at least one time I'll get a message after every post where somebody's like, "We've been thinking about buying. Tell us about the process." I tell them to call me. I don't message anybody. I don't text anybody. I want you
That's
to
right.
hear it in my voice that I'm excited to help you. And so, yeah,
Activity breeds activity, right? And that's the thing. Most agents are sitting back, sitting on their hands, waiting for things to happen. You have to create activity to have activity, and so it makes a ton of sense. Let me ask you about your schedule. What does that look like nowadays? How much prospecting are you doing? Walk me through kind of what an average day looks like for you.
yeah. So, ironically enough, you put out a video a little while back about how to reverse engineer things, and you're the first person to ever open my eyes on reverse engineering things. I'm going to touch base on that here in a second, but I try to get up before my kids do. I have 2 daughters now. They both one's in daycare and one's in school. Summer looks a little different, but on a normal day, I'll get up. I'll try to get a walk in or a workout in at like 6 in the morning, and then get them to school before 8. I'm back. I prospect until I set one appointment. usually when I prospect. When I set an appointment, that's kind of a way to keep me from getting burnt out, but also it's a way to give me a goal because if I prospect for 2 hours and I set 6 appointments, that's going to give me that's going to give me an excuse in my head. You know, I don't have to prospect tomorrow. So I set
Mm.
one appointment. Once I'm done, I'll shut it down till about noon, and then I'll eat, and then I'll talk to my wife on her lunch break, and then I'll follow up between the hours of like 2 and 3 because then I have to go get my oldest daughter from school, and then I leave my evenings open for appointments for whenever my wife gets home. She usually gets home about 5:30. And so a lot of times we're kind of high fiving each other as she's walking in on kid duty, I'm walking out on kid duty, and I'm going to work. Obviously, if I can fit an appointment in before 3, I try. But my goal is to try to set at least one appointment every single day.
I love it.
So anyway, yeah.
That's great. And then once you have, we talked a lot about the importance of the client experience. And so you don't have to go through every detail, but like, can you walk us through how you take care of a seller when you take a new listing? What does your process look like from a high level, Bill, to ensure that that client has an amazing experience? That when you sit across from them at a closing table, that they look back and say, you know what, Bill, we're so glad we hired you.
And so the number one complaint I get when I talk with sellers who have had previous realtors, their number one complaint is communication. So I tell them that I'm going to be almost over communicative to a point. When I sit down with them, we get the listing started. I say, I'll tell them when I'm scheduling pictures. I'll follow up with them on that. I will be there for them. I'll tell them after every showing, no matter what the feedback is, I'm going to give you unfiltered feedback.
Mm.
I even say, listen, if God forbid, we go a week or two without a showing, I will still call you and we're going to talk about what our next steps need to be. If it comes to it, and I've done this before, helping a couple not elderly ladies, but ladies who are of age and they have a house full of stuff. Once we get it under contract, if we're getting close, I'll volunteer a couple hours out of my day every day of the week. I'll go and I'll help them, and I keep them in the loop. And it's also all about negotiation. You have to know what their end goal is. If they tell you, hey, you need to take notes about this too. If they say, I can't be out on the day that it closes, I need an extra week. That has to be taken care of up front. You have to remember that because the last thing you want to do is paint yourself in a corner where they're excited because they've sold their house and you forgot a small detail like we have to have an extra week to move out, or we can't pay seller concessions, or we need X amount of dollars. So just taking care of them, like I said, as if they're your mother, as if they're your father, as if they're your best friend. And you have to uncover every stone and keep it in your mind, keep it in your notes, wherever it is, to make sure when you go over an offer with them, you're asking them, does this match up with this? Does this match up with that? Can we get to your next destination with this amount? Does it make sense? And just like I said, my mama who passed away 20 years ago, she has this saying, and we talk about it with kids, you have to handle them with gloves.
Mm.
That's how I handle my sellers, is just you have to just take care of them as if, they're fragile. So you have to discover a lot of things about them before you take over the task of selling their home, because it's not just about the number that they get out of it. It's about the next 2 or 3 steps.
Oh, so well said. I think that so many agents treat this as almost just like a transaction, and they treat it very
Mm-hmm.
transactional, where they do, maybe they don't mean to do this, but from the client's point of view, the bare bones minimum to get through the transaction, because it's so emotional for the buyer, for the seller, and for a lot of amateur agents, it's very emotional for them. And so you're exactly right. If an agent can look at this to say, I am going to blow this person away with the level of care, the level of support, the level of service, you'll never want again. You'll never have a need to get clients again, because it's so rare that these people have that type of an experience that they will sing your praises forever. And it doesn't take very long, and you're experiencing that right now. You've only been doing this for 3 years, and you're already getting repeat and referral business. Because it usually takes longer than that. It usually takes about 4 or 5 years for that business to start to kick in. But if you take great care of people, you'll never have to worry about getting clients again. That's my belief, and that's been my experience.
These numbers probably won't blow a lot of people away, but as of right now, I've closed 15 transactions this year. Again, I know those numbers aren't astronomical, but two two of them, and I have three more that are going to close. One of them isn't expired. Um, Everything else, for the most part, has been a referral. Now, or like sphere of influence. Now, when you go a step further, how did I? Why are they a referral? It most of the time backs back up to a phone call that I made as a FISBO or an expired. These are referrals from other clients who I've sold their house. And again, just like I said before, somebody said this. It may have been you a couple years ago that I heard that you need to treat every single transaction as if it's the only one you're going to do this year,
Right.
and that's planting a seed, and it's going to grow, man, if you take care of people.
Yeah. So last one for me, Bill. If you could get licensed all over again, all right, we go back to getting your license all over again, and you can redo your first year all over again. What advice would you have for yourself, or what would you do differently that other new agents can learn from?
I love this question. I love it. I love every time you ask somebody because it's always different.
It's the gold nugget.
Um, It is, man. It is. If you're brand new, or if I was brand new, there's no doubt about it. You're starting with little to no money. You're starting with little to no experience. Don't let either one of those stop you, because for the longest time, I held myself up from calling, especially expireds. I would stop because I would say, well, if that dude's been doing this for 10 years and he couldn't sell this house, there's no way I can. If you go in there and you just have the guts to pick up the phone, and maybe the first week you make one call a day. Second week, maybe you start making two calls a day. But just, I know that phone will weigh 10,000 pounds. Dude, just, I promise you, pick it up, because where you want to be is just on the other side of fear. And that fear is picking that friggin' phone up. So pick it up, make the call, create some relationships, and you'll thank yourself in 6 months that you did. That's what I would tell myself.
Love it, Bill. Awesome stuff, man. I appreciate you coming back on the show, taking some time to, to help these other agents succeed the way that you're succeeding. I'm
Yeah.
excited for you just keep doubling and tripling your business every year, which is super exciting. Who knows where you can take this, but I truly appreciate you jumping back on.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get ourselves back on the books for another 2 years. So I'm making about 1 million then. And but yeah, man, if there's anybody out there that needs anything, just reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you. Okay, Brandon, I
Bill,
appreciate you, buddy.
yep. Talk to you soon, brother.